The silver emblem pressed into the back of the place card should not have existed. Evelyn knew that before she even stood up. Hawthorne Press had closed 6 years ago after a fire. Her mother had talked about it for months because half the designers in Manhattan used them for luxury invitations. Yet here it was beneath a VIP chair at one of the most exclusive events in the city. "Miss Carter." The voice came from behind her. 2 security men in black suits stood waiting. Not aggressive. Somehow worse. Professional. Controlled. The ballroom had settled into a strange silence. Paramedics moved around the collapsed donor while guests clustered in nervous circles, whispering behind manicured hands. Nobody was looking at the man on the floor anymore. They were looking at her. Evelyn slipped the place card into the pocket zone inside her apron, a habit from years of protecting cash tips from disappearing hands. "They'd like you to stay available for questions." One of the guards gestured toward the side corridor. "Stay available. Not arrested. Not accused. But not free either." The hallway beyond the ballroom smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and expensive flowers. Staff moved quietly. Someone cried near the kitchen. Someone else was already replacing table linens as though a man hadn't nearly died 20 feet away. The industrial dishwasher roared behind swinging doors. Plates rattled. Life continued. Evelyn stood beside a service station clutching a damp towel while her pulse refused to slow. She replayed the room again and again. The donor, the chair, the glass, the place card. Something kept scraping at her memory. "You look shaken." Vivian Hale appeared carrying concern like jewelry. Elegant, polished, perfect. "This must be overwhelming." Evelyn said nothing. Vivian smiled gently. "These situations become complicated. People often remember things incorrectly when they're frightened." There it was. Not a threat. Not quite. A suggestion. Path being offered. "I remember where every place card was," Evelyn replied. Vivian's smile paused for half a heartbeat. "I'm sure you do." Then she touched Evelyn's arm lightly. "Sometimes loyalty is more important than accuracy." The words landed softly, like snow, like poison. Before Evelyn could answer, Vivian disappeared down the corridor. The silence she left behind felt colder than the conversation. 10 minutes later, the ballroom security team began reviewing footage from the cameras overlooking Table 7. Staff weren't supposed to see it. Evelyn only caught glimpses reflected on a monitor as she delivered coffee trays to a side office. The footage showed guests arriving, smiling, sitting, drinking. Then it skipped. Not glitched. Jumped. One moment read 8:14 p.m. The next read 8:21 p.m. 7 minutes gone. Nobody in the room seemed interested except her. "Camera issues happen," one technician muttered. "Not in 7-minute blocks," Evelyn said before she could stop herself. The technician looked annoyed. "You work security now?" No, she worked banquets, which meant she noticed things nobody else bothered to notice. Missing silverware, changed seating, late arrivals, wrong invoices, tiny details. Tiny details were usually where disasters started. She carried a tray of fresh coffee toward the administrative office and nearly walked past a wastebasket overflowing with shredded paperwork. Nearly. Something white caught her eye. A receipt. Torn but not destroyed. Coffee service. 2 drinks. 1 cappuccino. 1 black coffee. Purchased at 5:11 p.m. from the cafe across the street. The signature line was missing, but the order number remained. Evelyn frowned. The ballroom kitchen had provided refreshments all afternoon. Nobody involved in setup needed to leave the property for coffee. Yet someone had. She slipped the scrap into her apron pocket beside the place card. 2 pieces now. Both wrong. Both small. Back inside the ballroom, Luca Moretti stood alone near the windows. Most men looked powerful because people treated them that way. He looked powerful because he noticed everything. His eyes shifted briefly toward her, then toward the apron pocket where the folded receipt rested. "Miss Carter." His voice was quiet enough that nobody else heard it. "How many people were assigned to table 7 before guests arrived?" Evelyn hesitated. 1. "And after?" 2. He held her gaze for a moment. Not trust, not suspicion, calculation. Then he walked away. 20 minutes later, she found the shift log hanging beside the service pantry. Someone had altered it. A second server's name had been added beside table 7 using different ink, different handwriting. And next to that name was a timestamp entered at exactly 5:12 p.m. The possibility lingered long after the words were spoken. Luca closed the file and stared through the rain-streaked office window. 8 years. Trust was not something he gave easily, which was why the thought of giving it to the wrong person sat heavier than anger ever could. Most men would have exploded, broken something, demanded answers. Luca simply became quieter, and that was far more dangerous. The next morning arrived gray and cold. The ballroom had been transformed overnight for a donor appreciation brunch. Fresh flowers, fresh linens, fresh smiles. The kind of event designed to make wealthy people feel generous. Evelyn adjusted her name tag and carried a tray of coffee through rows of perfectly arranged tables. Everything looked normal. Too normal. That alone made her uneasy. Across the room, Vivian moved effortlessly between guests. Gracious, warm, the image of composure. If she felt pressure, she hid it well. Yet Evelyn noticed something small. Vivian checked the entrance every few minutes. Not obviously, just enough. As if she was waiting for someone, or worried someone might appear. Near the back of the room, Luca sat with his attorney and chief of security. A sealed manila envelope rested beside his untouched coffee. No one opened it. No one mentioned it. Yet it sat there like a loaded weapon. At 10:17 a.m., Luca finally stood. Vivian. His voice wasn't loud. The room quieted anyway. She turned immediately. Yes. Could you help settle a question? The smile remained on her face. Of course. Guests watched casually, assuming they were witnessing routine event business. Luca picked up a seating chart from the table. The donor who collapsed. Vivian nodded. Terrible situation. Which table was he assigned to? No hesitación. Table 7. Evelyn felt something tighten inside her chest. Luca glanced down at the chart. Then back up. Are you sure? Vivian laughed softly. Luca, I organized the event. Table 7? Yes. Silence followed. Not long. Just long enough. Luca set the chart down. Interesting. He said nothing else. Vivian's smile flickered. Tiny. Almost invisible. Most people missed it. Evelyn didn't. Because the donor had never been assigned to table 7. That was the entire reason the place card mattered. The seating records showed he had originally belonged at table 11. Someone had moved him. Vivian should have known that. She had personally approved every revision. Across the room, a waiter accidentally dropped a spoon. The sharp metallic sound cracked through the silence. Nobody moved. Vivian recovered quickly. There were so many last-minute changes. Her voice remained smooth. I'm surprised anyone remembers the exact details. Luca nodded once. Miss Carter does. Every eye in the room seemed to shift toward Evelyn. Not dramatically, just enough. She felt the familiar pressure of wealthy attention. The kind that measured and dismissed in the same breath. Vivian smiled at her. Evelyn has been very involved. There was something beneath the words now. Something sharper. Sometimes people see patterns because they need there to be patterns. Evelyn set a coffee cup onto a table. Carefully. Steadily. Sometimes people remember where they put things. The smile disappeared from Vivian's eyes. Only from her eyes. A vibration buzzed across the room. Someone's phone. Nobody reached for it. The sound came again. Then stopped. Luca picked up the sealed envelope and slid a single photograph onto the table between them. Not toward Vivian. Not toward anyone. Just there. Face up. The image showed the subcontractor employee entering the archive hallway 3 weeks earlier. Vivian looked at it. Only for a second. Then she looked away. Too quickly. Much too quickly. Because people don't avoid looking at strangers. They avoid recognizing them. For the first time since the investigation began, Evelyn watched uncertainty enter Vivian's posture. Small, controlled, but real. And when Vivian's gaze shifted toward her afterward, there was something new inside it. Not dismissal, not pity, not superiority. Recognition. The kind that appears when someone realizes the person they intended to overlook is no longer standing alone. Recognition changed everything. Not visibly. Not to the guests laughing over mimosas or the donors discussing charitable pledges beneath crystal chandeliers. But beneath the polished surface of the mansion, something had broken. An hour later, the ballroom was full again. Every seat occupied. Every table glowing beneath candlelight. The same room where Evelyn had been quietly humiliated. The same room where a man had collapsed. The same room where everyone had decided she was easier to doubt than to hear. Luca stood near the stage. No microphone. No announcement. Yet conversations faded anyway. His attorney sat at a nearby table. The chief of security stood beside a projection screen that had not been there earlier. Vivian remained composed. She even smiled. Luca, she said lightly. If this is about yesterday, perhaps we should discuss it privately. No, one word. Nothing more. The room became still. Evelyn stood near the back wall holding a small evidence envelope. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. A week ago she would have been terrified of every person in the room. Now she was tired of watching lies survive because they wore expensive clothes. Luca nodded once toward the screen. The chief of security pressed a button. Security footage appeared. Grainy hallway video. Date stamped 3 weeks earlier. The subcontractor entered the archive corridor. Several guests leaned forward. Vivian's expression did not change. You've already shown me this, she said. A vendor walking through a hallway proves nothing. Correct, Luca said. By itself. Another image appeared. The archive access report. Then the altered shift log. Then the coffee receipt timestamp. 5:12 p.m. Again and again. Different documents. Same minute. Same pattern. Vivian folded her hands. Coincidences happen. Yes, Luca replied. They do. Silence followed. Then Evelyn stepped forward. The room shifted when she moved. She could feel it. The old assumptions. The old dismissal. She opened the evidence envelope and removed a small flash drive. The archive camera was offline for 7 minutes, she said quietly. Everyone knows that. Several people nodded. Vivian almost smiled. Then Evelyn continued. But the hallway camera across from the loading dock wasn't. The smile disappeared. The chief of security inserted the drive. A new video filled the screen. Different angle. Different system. One nobody had thought to erase. The loading dock camera showed the subcontractor entering through a service entrance at 5:11 p.m. Vivian appeared 28 seconds later. She handed him an envelope. Not a greeting. Not paperwork. An envelope. Then both disappeared toward the archive hallway. Nobody spoke. The footage ended. The silence afterward felt physical, like pressure against the chest. Vivian's face remained calm, but color slowly drained from it. That proves I met a contractor. Her voice sounded thinner now. Nothing else. Evelyn looked at her. Play the audio. Heads turned. The attorney froze. Audio? Luca asked. Evelyn nodded. The dock camera records sound. Another file loaded. Static crackled. Wind. Traffic. Then voices. Vivian's voice. Clear. Undeniable. Move him to table 7. A man's voice answered. What if Moretti notices? He won't, Vivian said. He never notices the people serving him. The recording ended. Nobody moved. Luca did not speak. Did not blink. Did not look away from the screen. The pain arrived slowly across his face. Not because of betrayal alone. Because the sentence was true. He had noticed security threats. Contracts. Rivals. Money. Yet he had ignored the woman carrying trays through his events until she was forced to fight to be heard. Evelyn watched him realize it. Watched him understand how many chances he had been given to see. Across the room, Vivian finally looked afraid. Real fear. Not performance. Not strategy. Luca stepped forward. He took the altered shift log from the table, then the access report, then the receipt. One by one, the pieces Evelyn had protected when everyone else wanted them discarded. He stacked them neatly in front of him. The room remained silent. Then he looked toward his attorney and spoke so calmly it was almost frightening. "Call my attorney." No one moved after he said it. Not immediately. The ballroom seemed suspended between two worlds. The old one, where power could smooth over any lie, and the new one, where the truth had finally become too heavy to carry quietly. Vivian's attorney stood first. Then Luca's. Phones appeared. Conversations began in low voices, the machinery of consequences turning on one careful gear at a time. Vivian remained seated. The confidence that had protected her for years was gone now. Not shattered. Emptied. She looked around the room as if searching for someone willing to tell her this was a misunderstanding. Nobody did. 3 days later, the board of the Charity Foundation held an emergency meeting. By the end of the afternoon, Vivian Hale was removed from her position, stripped of financial authority, and named in an internal investigation tied to falsified vendor approvals, concealed payments, and fraudulent event records. The engagement ended before sunset. No public statement mentioned heartbreak, only accountability. Luca insisted on that word. Accountability. The subcontractor network was handed over to federal investigators. Several contracts were frozen. Several executives resigned. More names surfaced. More questions followed. The truth had not been one person. It had been a system that relied on people believing nobody important would ever notice the staff moving quietly through the background. This time, someone had. Evelyn expected the story to end there. She expected a polite thank you, a handshake, perhaps a check she would refuse. Instead, Luca asked her to return to the mansion 1 week later. The ballroom looked different in daylight. Smaller, less intimidating. The chandeliers no longer resembled judgment. They were only glass. Staff members moved freely across the floor, setting tables for another event. Not hidden behind service doors. Not pushed into shadows. Luca stood near the stage reviewing paperwork with his attorney. When he saw Evelyn, he closed the folder immediately. "There's something you should see." He led her into a conference room overlooking the gardens. Inside sat representatives from the charity board, the human resources director, and several department managers. Evelyn froze. For a second, she thought she had done something wrong. Then she saw the document waiting on the table. An official incident report. Corrected. Her name appeared on the first page. Not as a witness of convenience. Not as a server involved in a disruption. It identified her as the individual whose observations initiated the investigation that uncovered the fraud. Every record, every statement, every archived file had been amended. "People should be named correctly," Luca said. The room remained quiet. The HR director slid another folder toward her. It contained reimbursement records, overtime corrections, employee grievances that had been ignored for years, a new reporting system, independent oversight, protections for staff, changes that would outlive the scandal, changes that would matter long after headlines disappeared. "This isn't about what happened to me," Evelyn said softly. "It is now," Luca replied. "Because if it happened to you, it happened to others." Later that afternoon, a legal advocate arranged through the foundation met with her regarding her mother's care. The overdue hospital notices were resolved through a medical assistance fund approved by the board. Not a favor. Not charity disguised as control. A documented program available to every qualifying employee. The way it should have existed all along. 2 weeks later, Evelyn sat beside her mother in the memory care facility. Sunlight warmed the room. Birds moved outside the window. Her mother stared at the blue dress folded neatly across a chair. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Fragile. Brief. "I made that," she whispered. Evelyn swallowed hard. "You did." Her mother touched the sleeve. "It's beautiful." The same dress people had mocked. The same dress that made her feel too large, too visible, too out of place. Now it felt different. Not because the dress had changed. because she had stopped apologizing for wearing it. Several months later, another charity gala filled the ballroom. Guests arrived. Cameras flashed. Music drifted beneath crystal light. This time Evelyn walked through the front entrance, not carrying a tray, not looking for permission to belong. Her name appeared correctly on the guest list. Across the room, Luca noticed the familiar blue dress and paused. "Your mother still has good taste," he said. Evelyn smiled. "She always did." Luca looked away for a moment, blinking more slowly than usual. Then both stood quietly beneath the chandeliers that had once witnessed humiliation and now witnessed something else entirely. Not revenge. Not victory. Something rarer. A room full of powerful people finally listening to someone they once refused to see, and a woman who no longer needed anyone's permission to take up space.